Good afternoon or good evening when this goes out. Thank you for watching, it is appreciated. Cards on the table. I'm a reluctant monarchist. I have always been a reluctant monarchist. There was a time, about 15 years ago, by the way, that I was watching the Queen on Christmas Day. My uncle came round to use the toilet. He was on the cabs at the time. And he looked in, seeing me watch the Queen's Christmas address, and said to me, "I didn't know you was a royalist." And I corrected my uncle straight away. I said, Uncle Frank, I'm not a royalist. I'm a monarchist. There's a difference, which is what we're going to discuss in this video. Alright. Thank you for watching, by the way. I don't expect to win anybody round. The incumbent Charles III has been something of a colossal disappointment to many. This isn't a personal critique of the man. This is a critique of his position as head of Britain and the Commander-in-Chief of the United Kingdom. There's been images and there's been talk that he's worried, basically, about what Trump, the Donald, is going to say when he comes back over to the United Kingdom later in the year for a state visit in terms of immigration. Because we all know that Charles has globalist sympathies, shall we say. This reeks of something that happened in the 1980s when the Commonwealth was united in sanctions against South Africa and the apartheid situation, and Margaret Thatcher and the British government was the only government that was against it, and there was an anonymous leak to the tabloid press that the Queen wasn't too happy with the British government and her Prime Minister's stance on sanctions or lack thereof on apartheid South Africa. And there was tension between the monarch and the Prime Minister, if you were to believe the rumours at the time. This reeks of the same type of leaked comments to the tabloids from official sources. Now, you could look at it that the government can't critique the Donald directly, and so they have cleared the story to be briefed to the press, and the King, being constitutionally prohibited, shall we say, can't actually put out a rebuttal or this didn't come from us. They can't actually do that. So they have to swallow the party line, the government line, that the King isn't pleased with the Donald's tough talk and action on immigration. You could say that. That would be a charitable read of the situation. Either way, the effect is the same. The Crown's meant to be impartial. I've called for the Crown to dissolve Parliament because Keir Starmer is an appalling leader and appalling Prime Minister. And I have merit and I have weight to him wanting the King to do this because the Labour government was elected on 20% of the electorate and about 33% of the vote on the day. He does not have a majority of public support. And the Prime Minister definitely doesn't have a majority support for some of the more controversial policies like the farmers' tax, the tax on the private schools, and the open borders policy. He does not have public consent. At least 62% of the Labour voters actually want the borders to be closed to a degree, and they want lower migration, and they, at the very least, want foreign criminals deported. So even the lefties want stronger immigration controls than we've currently got. That's the difference. Public support. Public support is with smaller and lower migration, and public support is not with the Prime Minister on any of his controversial policies. That is how you can champion an interventionist monarch wanting to dissolve Parliament and call fresh elections, with squaring the circle of staying shut about migration, even if he personally disagrees with it. This is the balancing act that the late Queen followed. She was not controversial. There's some naive and silly, I'm going to say silly, political commentators on larger right-of-centre podcasts. They'll remain nameless because I think they're well-intentioned, but either they don't know their history or they don't know the gravity of what they're saying. They seem to think that the constitutional monarch really has a degree of latitude in where they go and what public appearances they make in support of the government. It really doesn't work that way. The government and the monarch are meant to be in lockstep, even with policies that some of their subjects or people may find difficult to deal with. This is the balancing act that King Charles hasn't mastered. And it's weird because he's had the longest time to perfect this. He's had the longest apprenticeship in history, and yet he's getting basic things wrong. He's turning people like me that have been lifelong monarchists into people with Republican sentiments. He has to be smarter. The monarchy is a British institution. A lot of people won't agree with it, and that number is growing by the day, and it's through the actions of the incumbents. I hope this made some sort of sense. This isn't a critique on the king personally. I know he's a very old man. This isn't. I'm trying to be balanced here and I'm trying to be measured. If he's got an opinion that opposes the will of his people, then he needs to just shut up. Anyway, these are just my thoughts. Do you think this leak came from the palace directly, or do you think the Prime Minister's leaked it on the King's behalf? Let me know, comment below. I appreciate your time as always, but yeah, I support what the Donald says, and the King needs to think about the future of the country and not his own pet projects. I appreciate your time as always. Like and subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. You have a good evening.